Jeff Ross, the game director for Days Gone, was feeling a little down during the PlayStation Showcase. He's been wanting to make a Days Gone sequel for quite some time. Here's what his tweet said. I get a little bummed out from these PlayStation Showcase shows because they only remind me we could have had Days Gone 2 out a month ago if we had just stuck to our guns. Days Gone released back in 2019, so yeah, here we are 4 years later. This would probably be around the time a sequel would come out. Jeff left Bend's studio back in 2020. There was some behind-the-scenes drama with him and some other members of the company, and a lot of hard feelings seem to still be around due to the fact that this game didn't get great reception, and again, the fact that Jeff and some other developers wanted a sequel to this game. And Jeff has been pretty candid in interviews about the ideas he would have added in the second game. Now, I finally played the game for the first time last year, and while it was kind of a breath of fresh air when it comes to zombie games, I don't know if this game necessarily needs a sequel. It would take some convincing for me to get on board, but I guess it is possible. So today I figured, why don't we look back at Days Gone, go over the good and the bad. I'll also look at some of the ideas that Jeff brought up in interviews on what he wanted to add to the second game, and we'll see if my mind can be changed. So let's get into it. So Days Gone, a game set in post-apocalyptic Oregon. We've seen this story before, human survivors trying to survive against the zombie hordes, fighting both zombies and each other, looting for supplies, looking for cures, and more drama here and there everywhere. The story in Days Gone is pretty good. This is one of its strengths. You play as Deacon St. John, who is voiced by Sam Witwer, by the way, and he does a tremendous job. Deacon was an outlaw biker guy before the zombies attacked. 2 years before the game takes place, a virus decimates human life across the globe, and most humans are turned into what are called freakers. Deacon, his wife Sarah, and biker buddy Boozer attempt to flee with Nero, the US government agency that responds to the zombie outbreak. And however, chaos ensues during the escape and Boozer is hurt. They eventually manage to reach a Nero helicopter, but there's limited room on it. Sarah jumps aboard and Deacon decides to stay back with Boozer and promises Sarah that they will reunite. Unfortunately, we fast forward a couple of years and Sarah is presumed dead because the refugee camp she was at was overrun by freakers. So Deacon and Boozer are out on their own in the Pacific Northwest. They now live their lives as mercenaries. So the game starts out where Deacon and Boozer are actually planning to head north in search of a better life. But hey, guess what? Shit hits the fan. Boozer gets hurt again and suffers some severe injuries. Deacon also learns that his wife may still be alive after having a conversation with a Nero agent. Deacon brings Boozer to Lost Lake Camp for medical attention. So the story branches out into 15 different storylines, and the total number of missions in this game is around 150, so it's your typical big and long open world game. Now these different storylines are basically focused on different people who you interact with throughout the game, and it's kind of neat to play through the multiple storylines at the same time. It makes it feel more personal with each of the individuals you are dealing with. The game also does a good job guiding you along the way too. You won't have all 15 available with the next mission at once. You will have to complete some parts of the story for other missions to pop up, so it's not just a bunch of chaos, it's actually organized in a nice way. I do like the way they handle it. To quickly go through the story here, Deacon eventually finds Sarah alive at a camp with other survivors who are led by a colonel that runs a tight ship, basically a military base. Sarah was and still is a government researcher, and both her and Deacon discover that she unfortunately helped make the virus that causes all this. The colonel wants her to make something that will kill all the freakers, but Sarah wants to find a way to make a cure instead. The colonel and some other enemies are eventually defeated throughout the rest of the game when everything comes to a head near the end. Deacon, Sarah, and Boozer then begin to settle down at Lost Lake. Now I know that's a super quick cut up of the story, but I really do want to focus on the world and the gameplay, which is both cool and lacking at the same time, and really is where I want to focus on with trying to determine if I want to see a sequel made for this game. And speaking of the ending of the story, it actually wraps up pretty nicely, so it's not like a sequel is necessary. It didn't leave off on a cliffhanger or anything like that. Again, they could continue the story for the big three, but it's not totally necessary. So the game was criticized for being a bland open world. Sure, it might be a unique setting in the Pacific Northwest where there's more nature than city landscapes, but there's quite a bit of repetition. Days Gone missions suffer from this across the board. You will discover a few survivor camps along the way, which each give you a boring to-do list set of missions. The more missions you do, the more trust and credits you earn with the camp. I would say this aspect is pretty cool and very important because this is how you purchase ammo, upgrade your bike, and buy new weapons. But Rescuing hostages, clearing out bandit camps, and taking down traitors gets old after doing it just a few times, and you'll do this quite a bit. Now let's talk about the bike. Now this is a pretty cool aspect in the game. Again, since Deacon is a motorcycle guy, you get to ride around on one in the game. There's not many games that offer the motorcycle element, and I did enjoy it. Not only does it help you get to places a lot quicker, but you get to tinker with it quite a bit, and honestly, it's your lifeline. The bike can help you get out of jams, especially against the massive hordes in this game, and it is necessary to chase people on occasion. You also have to keep the gas tank full, or if you run out, you'll have to leave the bike where it is, and you'll have to go at it on foot, and that can be dangerous at times depending on where you're at. And there's a lot to upgrade on the bike, like speed, durability, fuel capacity, ammo storage, and much more. You can also modify parts and paint, so you got your cosmetics and also your essentials. And I would say that speed and fuel upgrades are crucial and the most important. Too bad the game didn't offer you a chance to find rare upgrades out in the world, which would have given gamers more of an incentive to go out and explore. Because that's the thing, the world itself looks good, but it's not interesting. There's not really much to do in terms of exploring and looting. Looting is pretty limited. Clearing out camps and Nero checkpoints, again, gets old and repetitive. Now the dialogue and the main characters are compelling and interesting, but exploring this world is not. This could be a great game if those things went hand in hand with each other. There's nothing unique or iconic with the camps. There's not like a funny character to go talk to every time you go visit a certain camp. There isn't an interesting spot or location within these camps to check out and visit. There's no playing poker or playing some side game or side activities in the camps. That would be kind of cool. You see that with a lot of open world games. This game's lacking that. And even the times you do have to go explore and go house to house for missions or clearing out infestations, they just don't lead to anything memorable, other than maybe a couple close calls when trying to run away from a flock of zombies and when you're fighting them. But that brings me to a good point. One of the best aspects of this game, which is very memorable, is fighting hordes. Hordes are giant groups of swarmers, and they usually rest during the day in caves or in dark places, and then at night that's when they're moving about in a group looking for things to eat. You do have to avoid these hordes early on in the game because you will have zero chance. You need to wait a bit until you upgrade your character and you find better weapons before dealing with them. There's a total of like 40 hordes in the game that must be defeated in order to complete the horde storyline, and despite being very challenging, the rewards are worth it. You'll earn XP, camp trust, and credit, for example, and the more you take down, the more weapons and weapon upgrades you'll get. Now I'll admit I didn't complete all of the hordes because they were kind of a pain in the ass in my opinion, and it is nice to know that I didn't have to beat all of them to complete the game. I did a handful of them, either for fun or again, there's some of them that you do throughout missions, so you will get a taste of it regardless, but if they're too challenging for you or if you really just don't care that much, you don't have to knock out every single one. Now, in my opinion, guns are the way to go for all kinds of situations, not just hordes. I was never a fan of the melee combat, and that's a huge issue in a zombies game. It never felt good to hit zombies with a bat or a machete, and I think that could be because there's not really a lot of blood and guts when it comes to cutting up enemies. Both humans and zombies don't lose limbs when it comes to melee weapons, and there's very little blood splatter. That's about it. After playing games like Dying Light, I expect more from melee combat in a zombie game. Now, guns are a lot more fun to use. You have a mini arsenal to select from when it comes to guns. You have assault rifles, shotguns, submachine guns, pistols, a couple of special weapons that definitely come in handy when facing hordes, like a giant machine gun, a sniper rifle. There's also a crossbow too, which is cool because the game does have some moments where you could take a stealthy approach. But again, to me, the gunplay is where it's at. Attach a suppressor to stay quiet. It just feels good to use the guns. Aiming and shooting, all those mechanics work very well. You could also use grenades, pipe bombs, molotovs, mines, and traps to take out large groups of enemies, and again, come in handy when you're trying to take out hordes. And also, you could use your surroundings to your advantage too. You could shoot explosive barrels and containers, climb on the tops of buildings to make it difficult for the hordes to reach you, so there is some strategy involved when it comes to fighting hordes. So overall, the game has a great story. I think the writing and the dialogue and the characters, it's all fantastic, and the uniqueness with the groups of storylines, pretty cool too. Some of the survival mechanics, especially with the bike, are good. The hordes are tough, but one of the best elements of the game in terms of strategy and fun. The game, however, does have some typical open world pitfalls, repetitive missions and activities, a dull open world to explore, and basic systems that definitely could have had more added to them. The skills for weapons and survival are decent, but they're basic. We've seen them before. Upgrade your melee damage, improve your weapon accuracy, add endurance so you can run longer. All things that are definitely helpful in a game like this, but we've seen it before, it's nothing new. Alright, so let's come full circle here. Jeff Ross claims he was going to add more to the systems in the sequel. Ross planned on keeping the story focused on Deacon and his wife Sarah, and how they would cope with married life in the apocalypse. So, a heavy focus on the narrative would have remained, and that's a plus in my book. AI would have been improved, especially for animals. Now that would add some life to the open world, and then he also said that AI behaviors would improve as well for both enemies and allies. And Ross wanted to add more systems overall, and this is what he said in an interview last year. I would add more systems. Systems are very simple, and if they're simple, they can be elegant and very rich for the player. I knew adding 1 or 2 more layers to the systemic elements of it would have been something that we could have wrapped our heads around. It would have led to a ton of richness for the players, and a ton of unique open world moments and responses that we haven't seen before. Let's sink our teeth into this and do something even more epic. I'll be honest, I would really like to know what exactly these systems would be, because he's describing a whole lot of nothing here. It's good that he recognizes that the game needs more if the sequel is to be successful. I would be cool with a sequel game if the gameplay truly got better, if the world was less dull, and if they added more of these mysterious systems. However, I am content with saying that I played Days Gone and it was an alright game. A great story and a decent open world experience. I can continue my gaming journey happily without a second game. And I believe the company has already moved on anyways into, I think they're trying to make a multiplayer game. So it looks like Days Gone 2 will not be happening, and I think it's okay. The first game, I do recommend it for the uniqueness it does have, but I think we're okay without a second game. So did you play Days Gone, or at least follow it to some degree? If so, tell me your thoughts about the game and if you would like to see a sequel. If you liked the video, subscribe for more. You can also follow me on Twitter and TikTok at analyzethis_YT. Thanks for watching and take care.